Professor Homa. This is part 3 of part 2 of Holiday Card 2. Once again, very confusing, but of this, we'll just call this Kids Pond. This is part 3 of it. And so far we silhouetted out the background. We put a new layer behind it, so it looks like they're in a different environment. We did some image adjustments, some shadows, highlights, hue, saturation, worked on the layer mask to get rid of the background. It could probably be worked on some more, but for now, it's okay. And what I'm going to do now is throw some Inset Photos in here. And to do that, I'm just going to make a little rectangle here. And that's about, if I figure 1, 2, 3, I would need 5 photos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's probably a good size for Inset Photos, and they're just going to be kids sitting on Santa's lap, or they could be anything, but that's what I'm going to use for. So I'm going to make a selection here. Notice it's not on any particular layer. Right now it's on the layer with the layer mask, but when I paste this, it'll make a new layer. So selections are kind of independent. They work anywhere that you want to use them. So I'm going to open up one of the kids on Santa's lap, and I have boy 1, boy 2, girl 1, 2, 3, and they're based by ages. So I'll open up boy 1. He's the oldest one. And there's him sitting on Santa's lap, and I'm just going to make a nice big selection so I get most of what I want here. I'll make it a little wider because those. And remember and I clicked off and made that go away. Remember, you can move around a marquee by using the marquee tool. If you use the move tool and try to move it around, it'll cut it out. So you don't want to do that. You could use the marquee tool and move it around and reposition it. If you ever need to reset the size of the marquee other than redrawing it, if you go select, transform selection, you could kind of scale this selection and then hit OK, and then you'll be back with your selection again. But anyway, I just want to do an edit copy. Just copy those pixels. Go back here, and when I have the select, instead of just doing paste right away, I want to do an edit paste into. Paste into will paste what I have into this selection and use this as a layer mask, as a reveal selection layer mask. You'll see what I mean. I'm going to do paste into. I got pasted into. If you look down here, there's my layer mask. If I option click, that's what happened. So that photo has now pasted in there, but it's only being seen through this little window. Now I'm going to zoom out and use my arrow and try to see where the edge of that original photo is. That's the mask. Here's the original photo, and you can see it's huge. So I'm going to have to scale down by holding Shift. And notice if you scale too much, it's going to go out of that mask. You won't even see it. So try to scale towards the mask so you can kind of work in that window. Now, obviously, I'm going to zoom in quite a bit. Go up here. Try to zoom it in the middle of the window here. And just kind of reposition this. And that's probably good. I don't need a whole lot. I don't know how much detail I need of Santa here. But you get the idea that that's Santa. And once I have that scaled down, you can see I scaled it down about 16%. That's pretty small. And I'm going to hit return. And as far as this image, now right now I can keep repositioning this image in the mask because they're not linked. If you look over here, there's no link between them. If I link them by clicking right in between the layer mask and the layer, then the layer and the mask will move together. But if I unlink them, I can kind of still reposition this in here. And you don't want to move it out of there. You want to make sure that you stay within that little area that's there. Okay, so I'm going to actually link it, and I'm going to stay in my layer, and you can see this photo. It's very high contrast. It's real white Santa beard, real dark. So it's probably one of those images, again, where levels isn't going to do a whole lot. So I am going to try image adjustments, shadows, highlights. And you can see it pulls out more detail, pulls out more of those darks in there. There's this is before, now this is after. This is with the shadow highlight on. I always take it probably a little bit less. And I'll hit OK. And because I scaled this so much, I should probably do an unsharp mask to just sharpen it up a little. It is a small picture, and that's probably all I need. If the image is too warm, and I'll do another exercise that deals with warms and cools, but if it's too warm, I could always go to Image Adjustments, Photo Filter, and put on the cooling filter. There's a cooling filter 82, which works nice to kind of cool things down a little bit. I don't really need a lot here, but I can cool this down. It's not really doing a whole lot. Actually, I like it better without the cooling filter, so I'm just going to cancel that. So that looks okay. That image looks okay. What I'm also going to do with this image other than, now they're linked together and I can move it together. I'm going to go to Layer Style. This puts these effects on layers, and I have a whole choice of things I could use. I'm going to do a drop shadow and a stroke, and I could do it at one time or I could do it at separate times. But I'm going to do a drop shadow, and you can see the drop shadow down here. It's coming down and to the right, and I'll move this in here so you can kind of see these next to each other. And what you want to adjust with drop shadows, and this should help because all these things look very confusing. You want to basically adjust the distance and the size and move them kind of together. So I could go a little bit more. I probably wouldn't want to go much more than 10. I'll move distance and size. Size is actually how much it blurs. So if you blur it, it'll be like real muddy looking. That's the blur. Distance, it obviously, is how much the drop shadow, it makes it look further away. So, I don't want it real farther away. It looks kind of artificial. I just want it so it gives a little, so it just kind of raises it up a little bit. So that's probably good. And then one more thing I'm going to do, and you can turn that, sometimes I'll turn down the opacity. It's 75 by default. I might turn it down. I don't like a real harsh, I like a nice subtle drop shadow so you can see through it a little bit. I don't like it too dark. So that's it. Opacity, distance, and size are the only things. If you're, at high resolution you could go a little more. At low resolution you're probably only going to be within the 5 to 10 range. And with obviously the bigger image, the more you could do. But we're using these little tiny inset photos, so we're not doing a whole lot of distance or size on this one. Another thing I'm going to do down here at the very bottom is stroke. Now you can see it put a black stroke on by default. I'm going to put a white stroke on, and I'll hit OK. And then I could adjust the size of the stroke, and you can see it's getting round corners. If you put the position on inside, it keeps them nice and sharp. And I'm going to leave my somewhere maybe around 8. Might be an 8 pixel thickness for that little inset. So I have a stroke of white inside, about 8 pixels thick, and I have a drop shadow on, and I could go back and forth and edit these. And if I hit OK, I could go over to my layer palette, and you'll see there's drop shadow and stroke, and I can turn them off and on. I could put the stroke off and on, and I could put all the effects off and on by using this area in the stroke palette. And I'll move this over so you can see this when I do this. There's the effects are on, now they're off. There's the drop shadows on, now it's off. And the stroke on, off. So these are the effects that are showing up on here, and they can be edited too. So you could double click on drop shadow and change it, do anything you want to change it. Or the stroke. You could change colors or do whatever you want, or change the thickness if you don't like the thickness of it. Any of that you could change. That's a nice thing about these effects. Now, what's confusing is they're called layer styles in here, and then in here they call them effects, but they're the same thing. I don't know why they use both terms. They should just call it, this should just be called layer effects, is what these should be called. But anyway, just be aware of that little confusion at times. Now, we have to make 4 more of these little inset photos here with the layer mask. But I'm going to show you some shortcuts to make it a lot quicker, so we don't have to repeat all these steps over and over. So we got to make 5 more. So I'm just going to do 1 more and show you the steps to it, and then you should be able to do this on your own, other than possibly the text. So I'm going to review doing that on the next one. So I'm going to stop here